Merry Draft Miss Eve, everybody. This is a special Draft Eve edition of Sports Krunch with D-Crom via live stream. I'm your host, David Cromwell, and I am joined by one of the biggest friends of the program, Carl Dumler, who covers the Denver Broncos and the NFL Draft for High Huddle. And Carl, all I could say is for the past 48 hours or so, I have been spun around like a top like never before. These NFL teams are just throwing conflicting pieces of information at us one by one. Oh, there's going to be a big blockbuster trade up to the top 5. And Ryan Poles, the Bears GM, says, I expect a lot of movement. 49ers GM John Lynch, who picks one pick later, says, no, I don't expect that much movement at all on Thursday night. The Broncos are trading up. No, they're trading back. No, they're staying put. Oh, my goodness, Carl. I just cannot wait for tomorrow to get here because this 2025 NFL draft is turning out to be one of the most mysterious drafts we've ever seen, especially in the first round.
Yeah, I saw one of the big names, I can't remember which one, said something about the idea of there's about 50 names they could see going in, especially the last about 12 picks of the draft, of the first round. And
Ian
when you have that much,
said that, yes.
That's okay. That's who it said. Yeah. But when you have that much confusion, especially by the big name guys, for us little people on the totem pole, we're all that much more confused. And, pretty much the only thing we know right now is Cam Ward, pick number 1. That's about the only thing everybody can agree on. Most people are Travis Hunter's probably going number 2, but who's he going to? Is it Cleveland? Are they going to be willing to trade out of that spot?
Is Jacksonville going to move up?
Yeah.
They've talked about it. Ian Rappaport just said tonight on the Insiders that they talked about it.
Yeah.
In that building.
So, and really, I think every team should be talking to every other team in front of them and behind them, saying, hey, what do you want to move up? What's it going to take to move back, especially in this kind of draft where you don't know where these players are going? If you see your top, let's say, just because I've covered the Broncos, let's say you've got a board of 12, 13 guys you think can be going in the first round, and all but one of those are gone, and you're at pick about 14, you might be thinking, hey, we got to trade up. Otherwise, we're going to lose a lot of value here. So it is. It's going to be an interesting day tomorrow. I really have no clue what's going to happen. Like I said, I cover the Broncos, and I have no clue where they're going to be drafting. We're going to talk about some of the major mock drafts today. One has the Broncos trading up. Others have them taking a position that others have said, no, they would never look that direction. It just, nobody's in agreement right now.
Oh, absolutely not. But there are some areas of agreement that we'll get to, and one that I particularly noticed that I find very unique. But when it comes to trades in this draft, I don't know how many trades we're going to see tomorrow night, but the real drama people should be looking for is what makes this draft unique. There are only 4, 5, or 6 players that are viewed as consensus blue chip prospects league-wide. And after that, there is a chasm in terms of the variance of player grades from team to team that's bigger than we've ever seen. Like Benjamin Albright, one of the insiders whose mocks we're going to get to a little bit later, he said that there is very little drop-off from pick 12 to pick 100, if not beyond. That is what makes this draft so unique. It is very, very light on star power, but boy, do you have a boatload of guys who could be quality starters in this league all the way into the 4th round, if not beyond.
Yeah. There are definitely a lot of names I like. There's very few that I really love. You talked about blue chip players. I mean, really, you could technically say there's only 3.
Yep.
Hunter, Carter, and Genty.
Correct.
I think those are about the only 3 that people really agree on. Even Mason Graham, I know a lot of people really like him, but I was listening to somebody the other day and they said, hey, when you look at the defensive tackles that have gone top 5, top 6, they don't look like him. They are 6'5", very long, very strong, can get in the back. Like, they're just athletic freaks. And Mason Graham's great. Like, he's technically sound. but he doesn't have quite the high upside of some of those other guys that we've talked about before of that have gone. And so he's one. Is he really a truly blue chip player? I don't know. I mean, you could almost make an argument Walter Nolan is maybe the better defensive tackle prospect because of his high upside. And so, like I said, really there's about 3 true blue chip players and then a couple others that you could make an argument for. But it's kind of a weird draft, not really much at the top, but a lot in the middle of this draft that are going to make a lot of teams happy.
No question about it. And I'm glad you mentioned Walter Nolan because let's go to the Nuggets dish down one of the mocks this morning. Peter Schrager said that he would be shocked if Walter Nolan falls out of the top 15 picks. You and I talked about Walter Nolan on our defensive line edge episode, previewing those prospects at those positions. And I mentioned that Lance Zierlein, one of the top minds in the industry, had Walter Nolan as his top D tackle of the draft ahead of Mason Graham, and most others did not. And you said exactly why he would think that way, because Walter Nolan, his ceiling is superstar potential.
Yeah, if you go watch his game against Georgia, who has 3 guys in the interior that are probably going to go top 100 in drafts, he dominated them. Like there's 8 plays where he was throwing them to the side. They were trying to double team him, and he was splitting them, making plays in the backfield. And so, like I said, when he is on, when he is fully at what he could be, he is a top 5 player in this draft, true blue chip kind of guy. You got to work through the character issues. Like there's some things in his background that teams have a lot of questions about. There's a lot of plays where you're kind of going, where are you? Like he just kind of picks and chooses a little bit of when he's going to go. I compare it to a little bit of, I'm not trying to say he's going to be to this kind of level of athlete, but like Lionel Messi, one of the best soccer players to ever play the game. You watch him play soccer, and there's a lot of times where he's just kind of jogging about 30% speed. But all of a sudden, when he sees a lane and that guy kicks it up to 100%, you're not stopping him. He knows how to conserve his energy. He knows when he can attack, and he goes for it. And I feel like Walter Nolan does that to a degree, probably too much. You know, his lows are really, really low, and they're too often. But like I said, if he's there, pick, let's say, like I said, 14, 15, he's still there. If I was a team in the 20s, I'd be calling, because I'd be going, there's a big drop off from him. Even if this is a really good defensive tackle class, you're not finding guys like him.
No doubt about it. And speaking of character issues, Jay Glazer put out a post on X today that I found very intriguing. He said this, and I quote, "Interesting thing came up in my draft prep calls. For years, teams have pulled players off the board for A, injury concerns, or B, character concerns. A third category or reason has been added, and most teams I talked to had guys off their board for doesn't love football. This was the first year it was so prevalent. I asked Ron why that is, and the thought was because of NIL money. Guys have already been paid, and some feel they don't need to grind to get paid. So the guys who love football are probably appreciating more." Just an interesting tidbit to pass along. And the fact that Walter Nolan transferred constantly in college and even in high school is giving a lot of these teams pause for very similar reasons.
Yeah, there's a few players that have that mark against him. McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona. There's a video from a few years ago where somebody at a restaurant was asking him some questions, and he goes, "Yeah, I don't really like watching film. I only watch what I have to." Some people took that as a really bad mark on him. To me, I'm going, he was 19 at the time. Come on. What 19-year-old is like, "Oh, I love just grinding the film"? Not many. Yeah. So he's learned, he's grown. You can tell he watches plenty of film. You think of Shedeur Sanders. He's another he's got a lot of interest outside of football. You know, he's got his fashion line that he has. There's rumors that he and Cam Ward were working out at one point, and he asked Cam Ward if he'd like to do a video together. And Cam Ward was like, "No, I'm playing football." And Shedeur's like, "No, let's just do a quick video, like a music video together." And he's like, "No, I want to play football. Like, that's what I'm here for."
Woo!
You know? And so there's kind of those questions with him. How much is he really going to be a great locker room guy, real leader, especially when you're talking about quarterback? I think it was, I'm trying to remember who put out, I think it was Tom Pelissero. That's who it was. He interviewed a bunch of GMs, and there was a lot of really big red flags about Shedeur Sanders. Doesn't ride on the team bus when he's going to games. He gets his own vehicle, rides by himself. He missed practices because he had Fashion Week in France.
Kind of sounds like Bo Callahan from draft day, huh?
Yeah, something like that. Now, his teammates still had good things to say about him, so I'm not trying to say he's quite to that level, but still, like, there's those things you got to work through of how are we going to deal with this? Because this is going to be a big personality in our locker room that could lead people away, could turn people off, all those kind of things.
Without a doubt. And I want to stick with the quarterbacks for a moment and then revisit a point I made a couple minutes ago. And then we will get into comparing and contrasting these four insider mock drafts that came out today. And speaking of Shedeur Sanders, I said on the final episode we recorded before the draft with my buddy Hal Bent, who will join me tomorrow night for our round one live stream beginning at 6:30 p.m. Central Times, that's 7:30 Eastern, 5:30 Mountain, 4:30 Pacific, where I'm at right now in California at my folks' house. I asked him, if you were putting together a parlay for day one of the draft, would you be willing to bet that Jackson Dart is the second quarterback off the board and not Shedeur Sanders? And he said yes. And Matt Miller reported last week that multiple teams have Jackson Dart as the second best quarterback on their board because they believe, compared to Shedeur Sanders, he has a lot more physical traits and upside. And a common comparison that's been thrown around for Shedeur Sanders is Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater, who was the quintessential what you see is what you get kind of quarterback. So if you had to put a bet on Jackson Dart being the second quarterback off the board in this draft, would you be willing to make it?
I probably would, honestly. I've been hearing so many more negative things about Sanders than I've probably heard of any other top quarterback prospect. And it's not much of what he does on the field. On the field stuff, there's a few questions, takes too many sacks, sometimes doesn't play within the flow of the game kind of thing. Those come up every once in a while. But to me, character is a huge, huge thing when it comes to quarterback. You need a guy that just lives and breathes the game, just wants nothing more than to be a legend. And I'm not sure that falls into his category. Jackson Dart, I don't know exactly, but the few times I've listened to him talk, seems like a guy that loves the game. I worry a little bit about him coming from Ole Miss. Not much of a pro system there. So he's not asked to do a lot of things that you would want from a quarterback, but higher upside, bigger arm, more of an athlete. There's a lot of things to like. I loved his ability to work under pressure. That's a big thing when you get to the NFL because you're going to have bodies around you at all times. So you got to be able to work in a tight area and make an accurate throw. And he was by far the best quarterback under pressure of this draft. So for those reasons, I would definitely, if I was a team after Cam Ward, the Saints, the Steelers, there's a lot of other teams too, but Giants and Browns coming back up.
A lot of buzz on the Giants and Brian Dable in particular being enamored with Dart.
Yeah, that would be a position I'd really like to go. Get your blue chip player in the first, come back into the late first to get that fifth a year option on him. Sounds good to me.
I could not agree more. When it comes to rolling the dice on a future franchise quarterback, traits are a big factor. And it's not just the leadership traits. It's those physical traits that are worth betting on. Dart has those, and Shedeur Sanders does not. And that is why nobody in America should be shocked or surprised if Jackson Dart gets his name called before Shedeur Sanders does. And revisiting a point I tried to make a couple minutes ago, but I kind of trailed off a bit. People want to be excited by trades, and I get that. It's natural, but we have to prepare for the possibility that there's less than 5 trades tomorrow. And the drama that people should be looking for tomorrow is the idea, as Ian Rappaport said, he could think of 50 possible players that could go in the back end of this first round. We are going to see the drama tomorrow is going to come in the form most likely of players being drafted far higher than where they're ranked on that consensus on those industry big boards. And by the way, folks, I would highly recommend you have Arif Hassan's consensus big board with you during the draft. It's one of the best tools to gauge value, because we're going to see a lot of proverbial reaches tomorrow night. And also in terms of trades, because of the lack of blue chip talent, teams that want to trade back are going to have to settle for a lower haul than a lesser haul than usual. And because there's as Jason Light said, he's heard of very little teams that really want to move up, and most everybody wants to trade back. So thus it's a seller's market. And in a seller's market, the teams that want to trade down are going to have to settle for far less. Like, for example, if the Jaguars decide to trade out of 5 with the Bears, they might have to swallow only getting picks 10 and one of the Bears' 2 second rounders in return.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I can't remember who I was listening to. They were talking about the Bears moving up. They said, but there's 6 teams in the top 10 that want to move back. And so that right there, like you said, Bears could be getting themselves a really, really nice position to go get their guy, whoever they want with that extra second round pick. They've got some movement power that most teams don't have.
Yes.
And that's where I also look like the Broncos at pick 20. They're in a really good spot where they could move up just a little bit if they needed to, and it wouldn't cost them a ton. They can also move back. Let's say, Pittsburgh, they haven't signed Aaron Rodgers by then. It doesn't look like they're going to sign him before the draft. And Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart are both right there. And the team's going, hey, we want to make sure we get our quarterback that's there at the top of the second. Cleveland Browns, Giants, maybe even Raiders want to make up some kind of move. Geno Smith, they just signed him to the long-term contract, but it's not anything that they can't get out of here in a year or two. And so maybe they're looking for their guy. And it's lots of teams that could be really trying to get that trade up, and Broncos could be the one big benefactor there, or, Bucks at 19, Seattle
Seahawks at 18. Yep.
Yeah. There's a few teams right there that could be in talks of that trade back area. So I think that's probably where we're going to see the movement. Maybe one team from, like I said, Bears from 10 up to 5 or 6, 7, somewhere in there. And then maybe right there, early 20s, see another trade.
Oh, yes. And as a Bears fan, and I just want to tell all other Bears fans out there, do not necessarily expect a trade up because of the seller's market, and teams who are smart are not going to want to settle for a seller's market price to move down. So don't get your hopes up too much. Just keep your expectations managed. That would be my advice. Like, I took the under personally on 5 trades tomorrow because of the because like I said, after the first 4, 5, or 6 players, and then there's might be a mini gulf in between with like the Jalen Walkers and the Mason Grahams of the world. But after those guys, like, there is like the gap between pick 10 and pick 100 this big this year. That's why I expect to see less than 5 trades tomorrow. What do you think?
Yeah, there's going to be players that you find very closely graded amongst your players. We're going to be like, oh yeah, we've got 6 guys we really like. Why are we trading up when we can wait and just see which one's still there when we pick? And like I said, with Bears, I'm just saying that they have the power to trade up. I'm not saying that they're actually going to do it, because there's going to be a good player that falls to them at 10. Yeah. And maybe they're looking at it as, hey, we've got first and 2 second round picks. We can get 3 high quality players that are going to be impact guys for us this year and beyond. Let's not turn that into 2 and, limit our chances of an impact happening there.
And without further ado, let's compare and contrast these 4 insider mock drafts. And these mock drafts, I put a lot of value in, and NFL clubs themselves put a lot of value into mock drafts done by these people, because these mock drafts are based on intel that they're hearing around the NFL right now, as opposed to people who do mock drafts for fun and just say, oh, here's what I would do in this situation. These mocks are the gold standard, dare I say, for pre-draft buzz. And the first 4 picks right now appear to be set in stone. Like, I would be pretty surprised if the first 4 picks do not turn out like this. And it was like this in all 4 of the mocks. Cam Ward, obviously, to the Titans at 1. Travis Hunter to the Browns at 2. Abdul Carter to the Giants at 3. And Will Campbell to the New England Patriots at 4. However, Daniel Jeremiah did hint that there has been buzz that the Giants might trade out. And I came across a rumor today that the Bears are, not only are they calling the Jaguars at 5, they are calling the Giants at 3, potentially to target Abdul Carter themselves. So, but if I'm the Giants, if the Bears do not offer me their first round pick next year, I am not budging. What do you think?
Yeah. You don't move from 3 to 10 without a first round pick. Especially when, like you said, the quality. There's about 3 or 4 guys that are worth it, really, really worth it to be a top 10 pick this year. And you're saying I'm willing to miss out on that. So it better be pick 10, first round pick, and probably one of those second round picks for me to feel really good about that kind of decision, to miss out on a guy like Abdul Carter.
Without a doubt. And 10 or 39 or 1041, that's not enough. It has to come with the 2026 first as well if I'm the Giants to move out of 3. Yeah. So I'd be surprised if the Giants trade out of 3. So the first 4 picks is so. But 5 is where things get interesting. For weeks, if not most of this draft process, virtually everybody thought the Jaguars were going to go with Mason Graham because their new general manager, James Gladstone, came from the Rams, and he loves the kind of body type of defensive tackle Mason Graham has. Kobe Turner is a similar body type. He drafted him with the Rams, and Braden Fisk is a similar body type. He traded up for him last year. But the noise started before last weekend, and it has gone to DEFCON 10 level loud. That the Jaguars are going to go offense here if they keep the pick, if they don't trade back. They could be trying to entice teams to trade back, but like there's some talk they could throw a curveball and take Tetsuroa McMillan here. But if they keep the pick, I think Ashton Genty actually makes the most sense for them if they don't go Mason Graham because keep in mind, Travis Etienne heading into the final year of his contract, and he's no superstar. And Tank Bigsby is a good backup running back. And Liam Cohen, why did Baker Mayfield play as well as he did last year? The Bucs ran the snot out of the football, and he's a clever run game play designer. And having Ashton Genty there could be the key to unlock the greatness that I think is still inside of Trevor Lawrence. What do you think?
Yeah, that's I know I've heard a lot of quarterbacks or coaches talk about this. I've heard Andy Reid talk about it. I've heard Sean Payton. I've heard McVay talk about this as well. Shanahan, all of them talk about the run game being one of the quarterback's best friends. When you can have a run game you can lean on where teams can't just pin their ears back and say, like, we dare you to run against us because we know you can't. I remember and I hate to talk about this, but Super Bowl 48, Broncos versus Seahawks. And the Seahawks were daring the Broncos to run. They're like, we're not going to let Peyton Manning beat us. We're not going to let Demaryius Thomas and, all these receivers and, Julius Thomas was there at that time. We're not going to let these guys beat us. You're going to have to beat us with the run game. And they couldn't do it. And so when you are missing that element, the really good defenses can shut you down. And so for Jacksonville to have where, hey, you can't just drop into a cover 2 or cover 4, cover 6 shell. You've got to respect that this running back can take off. He can go win the game. He can go for 250 yards and it not be a crazy thing. And so I think that would be a really good pick for them. Like I said, Genty is one of my blue chip players in this draft. There's a lot of good running backs, but Genty is far and above the best one.
Yes.
I think day one, he's the top 5 running back in the NFL. Yes,
keep this in mind. The 2 highest rushing total numbers in college football last year was Ashton Genty's total rushing yards at 1 overall, which came so close to eclipsing the all-time college single-season rushing record still held by Barry Sanders. And number 2 was the amount of yards Ashton generated after contact. That's how special he is. He has insane contact balance, insane strength, and insane creativity. He can rip off big runs better than the vast majority of other running backs can do. And he's also an underrated weapon in the passing game. But Boise State obviously didn't use him too much that way because their quarterback isn't that good. But that's how special Ashton is. He is like on the level of like a Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, or even better type of running back prospect. And that is why I would not object to the Jaguars going to Jetty. Plus, this regime, the new regime in Jacksonville, they didn't draft Etienne or Tank Bigsby. And running back is the most discardable position in football. So, and all four of the insiders in their mocks had Jetty going to the Jaguars at 5. And as of right now, I would fully expect the Jaguars to go that way. The Raiders at 6 is where it gets interesting. Like I've heard that if it's not Genty, it's Armand Membu, and I still personally would lean that way if I would, as I had in the final mock that I put on my X and Facebook and Instagram accounts today. But there's another possibility. Like Schrager and Benjamin Albright had them taking Armand Membu at 6, but Matt Miller and Peter Schrager had them taking Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas. And I wouldn't be shocked out of my shoes if Kelvin Banks was actually the pick there, because keep in mind, Colton Miller is getting a little long in the tooth, and he's in the middle of a contract dispute. And Pete Carroll is not shy of bringing in competition for anybody. He doesn't treat anybody like a sacred cow in his program. So, while I would still expect that pick to be Membu and for them to figure out something with Colton Miller, kind of give him a similar contract that the Broncos just gave Garrett Bowles, because they're both at similar stages of their career. But Banks shouldn't necessarily be a surprise there. What do you think?
Yeah, that's just it. There's 3 offensive tackles, pretty much all graded very closely for this draft: Campbell, Membu, and Banks. And it really is kind of a flavor of the week. Which one do you like? That they all offer a little something different. I personally like Membu just because I think he has the higher upside. He's got that length with his arms. I think he's a little bit more athletic. I think he's got a little more power to his game that can move people. And I know he's played only right tackle in college football, but I do think he can move over to left tackle if you need him to. And that's where the nice thing with the Raiders, like you said, you've already got your left tackle in Colton Miller. You can have Membu right now be your right tackle and start working to train him to become your left tackle. And so then you'd be really set, at least for the next year or two, at the tackle spots. And then eventually you can move him over to take over the more premier position at left tackle. And I mean, it's not as easy as I'm making it sound here, but we've seen it happen. Penei Sewell, Tristan Wirfs, that they've made that transition from right tackle to left tackle and been Pro Bowl players at both spots. Like if you are a really talented tackle, you're going to be able to figure it out. Like you're smart enough. It takes a little time. Don't get me wrong. But like I said, I'm willing to bank on the upside of Membu compared to those other two who have been very consistent through their college career. But I don't think they have quite the ceiling.
Yeah, that is a very, very good point. And Kelvin Banks Jr., he's like Ian Rappaport himself said, do not be surprised if those 3 tackles go off the board, not just in the top 10, but within the top 8, for crying out loud. So that's something to keep an eye on. These tackles are going to go quickly. And the New York Jets are up at 7. And let's see, Schrager had them taking Tyler Warren, who they've been linked with for months, which is not a surprise. And Benjamin Albright had them taking Tyler Warren as well. But Daniel Jeremiah, since he gave the Raiders Kelvin Banks in his mock, he gave the Jets Membu. And if both Warren and Membu are on the board there, I think that decision becomes infinitely harder, because the current starting right tackle for the Jets is Carter Warren, who was a day 3 pick in 2023. And this is a new coaching staff. Keep that in mind. And I'm not sure that they would have confidence in him to handle that job, to protect, not just protect Justin Fields in the passing game, but to open up lanes for that running game as well. So, and not only that, Matt Miller threw an interesting bone in his mock draft, he gave the Jets Jalen Walker, and he cited that they were mentioned in conversations as a team looking for an impact defensive player and, above all, a culture building leader. And Jalen Walker is one of those quintessential culture guys because he's a coach's son. He has a high football IQ. Like teams have described him as almost like a coach based on how he was on the whiteboard. And he is like that guy. Kind of like Frankie Louvu of the Commanders, who you can have him line up at stack backer in space on occasion, but always have him going forward and hunting the quarterback and hunting the ball. That's the kind of player Jalen Walker is, and how he owned Kelvin Banks in that game against Texas just shows you how special he could be. So that wouldn't necessarily shock me. If Mason Graham is available at 7, that wouldn't shock me. And Rich Cimini, this guy is, I mean, the most plugged-in reporter on the Jets beat. He covers the Jets for ESPN. And the ESPN NFL Nation mock draft yesterday, with Membu went 6 to the Raiders. It even Tyler Warren was obviously still available at 7, but he went with Kelvin Banks, and he did some doc connecting because Kelvin Banks actually comes from Humboldt, Texas, which is where Aaron Glenn is from. So at 7, I'm not as confident about Tyler Warren or even Membu being locks there anymore.
Yeah, I'm kind of a build from the inside out kind of guy. So if you can build a great offensive line compared to adding a great weapon, I'd probably lean that way. And you think of Justin Fields, like part of what made him great with Ohio State, that got him to be in a top 20 pick in the NFL is the very fact that he had a great offensive line. He had time to go through his reads. And then he didn't have to have the greatest athletes because he was a great athlete himself. If wide receivers couldn't get open, boom, he's taking off running. And so far in his NFL career, nothing against your Chicago Bears, but they did not do a great job giving him an offensive line to function. Nope. No quarterback was going to be able to play at a high level behind that offensive line. So I would love to see you give him a top offensive line in football, positions 1 through 5 being pretty darn good quality. I think he could really do something pretty decent out there. I don't think he'll ever be a top 10 quarterback, but he could be a top 15, top 16, 17 quarterback. And with the Jets, with that defense, that's not bad. I think you could be a winning organization in putting all that kind of stuff together. So nothing against Tyler Warren. He's a talent. He's another one of those players that's right on that edge of being blue chip. I should probably consider him a blue chip player. So if they take him, that's great. Teams have to worry about it. Like, what are you going to do? How are you going to cover that? Again, tight end is such a tough position to transition to the NFL. Yes. It takes a few years. And right now, if you want to maximize Justin Fields, I'm not sure Tyler Warren is your guy to do that.
Plus, the return on investment on tight ends drafted in the first round, it's the lowest out of any position. And for what it's worth, keep in mind, this is also a new regime with the Jets with Darren Muji, who you obviously know was this Broncos assistant GM these past several years, and Aaron Glenn. I read a post on X that they're not the ones leaking this stuff right now. So the Jets are more difficult to figure out than you think here. And the Carolina Panthers at 8, Schrager gave them Jalen Walker. Benjamin Albright gave them Jalen Walker. But Daniel Jeremiah gave them Mason Graham. And Peter Schrager threw a curveball. No, it was Matt Miller that gave the curveball. Schrager gave them Walker. Matt Miller had them taking Walter Nolan. So if you're looking at, keep in mind, the Panthers, that defense was pathetic last year. They're going to focus there first. And if these 3 guys are on the board, staring you in the face, Jalen Walker, who's obviously been the chalk pick to the Jaguars at 8, Mason Graham, and Walter Nolan, that is not an easy decision at all.
In my head, as you were talking, I talked myself into all 3 of them at different points. And that was within a matter of like 30 seconds of you talking. So, I mean, it's hard to choose. Like, you got 2 players with a little bit of risk. Jalen is, how are you going to use him? I mean, his best way is coming downhill, but if he's playing that off-ball linebacker, you kind of like him to be able to drop back in coverage. And he did that some in college, but we don't know fully how he's going to be at the NFL level. Walter Nolan, we've already talked about it with the character issues. What's he going to be with that? and I'm not sure Carolina has the locker room, the top guys to keep him in line that like I would want. I think there's some better organizations out there to maximize him, to kind of have some veterans that, hey, we're going to take you under our wing. We're going to show you how this is done. I don't know that Carolina is quite at that point. So if I was them and I was choosing between the three, this is where I finally think I settled. I think I'd probably take Mason Graham. He can be a future leader of that locker room on the defensive side of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
You know what you're getting with him. Like,
Yes.
He's one of the safest players in this entire draft. He's going to help you in the run game. He's going to be great in the pass game. He's going to be a nice stalwart there in the middle for you. And you can build out from there. That's kind of where I'd probably go if I was picking between the three.
Yeah, him and Derek Brown in the center of that defensive line, sign me up for that. Ejiro Evero would absolutely love that. And this was one of the more interesting consensus picks amongst the top four. All four of these mock drafts had New Orleans Saints selecting Georgia defensive end Michael Williams. And this guy, as we said on our defensive line head special, Carl, this was a guy very early in this draft process, as around last summer. He was being touted as a candidate to be the top overall pick of this draft, but unfortunately an ankle injury destroyed his season, and he gutted through it. But in his own words, he was just playing 60% here. But this guy is he's one of the more high floor players in this class because he's got teach tape run defense already, and there's still some untapped upside with him as a pass rusher because obviously at Georgia they don't tell those guys to pin their ears back all the time. If not most of the time. More of the time, they just say, go occupy space and stop the run.
Yeah, there's some that where, again, Jalen Walker, they would have him kind of doing the head hunting. And they'd let the other guys, hey, take up some space, let these other guys really go in there, get the play. Michael Williams, they had him moving around sometimes. He was at the 3 tech, 4 tech, 5 tech, 9 tech. I mean, so it'll be interesting to see how he would be used in the NFL. I love him. I really do. I loved a few weeks ago where he was still available in the 20s and I could mock him to the Broncos. And pretty much every single time, like, he was my pick for the Broncos because I'm going, this is a top 10 talent. And so for the Saints to get him, I know there's some talk of quarterback. They're not ready for quarterback. They're nowhere near at this point ready to put a quarterback in that situation and have them be able to thrive. There are certain situations that I just sit there and say, we got to wait until we have at least a little bit of an infrastructure ready for a quarterback to step in. Otherwise, we are going to get them destroyed before we ever have a chance to see what they could be. And right now, I feel like that's where the Saints are. They need to clean some things up. So getting a player that you could build your entire defense around in Williams, I think that would be a home run hit for them.
Yeah, plus Cam Jordan, who may be wearing a gold jacket one day. He's on the last legs of his legendary career there in New Orleans. And Michael Williams, I'm not necessarily comparing his play style, but he does have that similar rugged body type as Cameron Jordan has.
He does. He's long, he's strong. He's got the same kind of attitude of how he attacks the game. He does all the little things right that make a Hall of Fame kind of type of player. Like, you got to be able to do the little things. It's great if you get the big plays, but if you can't do the little things when the play isn't quite designed coming towards you, that's always a nice thing to have. So I think he would be a great piece for them. They could start rebuilding that defense, or really rebuilding that entire roster. That's what they got to do. They're in maybe one of the worst situations in all of football, in my opinion. Like, they have a lot of money cash-wise, but they've used it so poorly. They've got to clean it up here in the next year or two.
Oh, without a doubt. As Hal and I were talking about on the podcast, the Saints head coaching vacancy this year was the least attractive head coaching job in any of the 4 pro sports league in God knows how long. And based on the tea leaves, they're not going quarterback at 9, and it would be the height of idiocy for them to do so, given the quality of quarterbacks in this class. So Michael Williams would definitely make a lot of sense there. And the Bears at 10, Schrager had them trading back with Indy, and Indy coming up to take Colston Loveland, the tight end. Matt Miller had them staying and taking Colston Loveland, even though Mason Graham was on the board. Benjamin Albright had them going with Kelvin Banks Jr., and Dan Jeremiah had them going with Tyler Warren. So the Bears, yes, they may surprise us all and make a blockbuster trade up the board, whether to 5 or even more unlikely to 3. But they're most likely going to have to stay at 10 and let the board come to them. And I have this scenario in my head. Let's say these 3 guys are on the board. You can make an argument for either one of them. Kelvin Banks, keep in mind, Braxton Jones, he's a what you see is what you get left tackle. He's coming back from injury, and he's coming out of contract after this year. And given the contract the Titans just gave Dan Moore in free agency, I'm not sure I want to pay a guy like Braxton Jones that kind of money. So that factors in here. And Kelvin Banks started at left tackle in college, and he does have those skills on the move that Ben Johnson covets in his offensive line. But you could also obviously make an argument for Mason Graham. The defensive line is still a big issue. Yes, you significantly upgraded the offensive line, but the defensive line is just as big a need right now because you don't have you don't have good D tackles right now outside of Andrew Billings, who constantly gets hurt, and that edge opposite Montez Sweat. They did roll the dice on Dio Dangbo in free agency, but you can never have too many bodies up front, and I wouldn't be necessarily betting on Dio Dangbo to be the guy in that rotation. He needs to be one of the guys, just not the guy. You can't put too much pressure on a guy like that. And having Mason Graham in that defense, and plus Dennis Allen would like a player like Mason Graham, I believe. And also keep in mind, Ben Johnson loves those 2 tight end sets. And Matt Miller reported that Colston Loveland is the top tight end on the Bears board. And I think it makes sense because Zierlein's player comparison for Colston Loveland, somebody named Sam Laporta, who Ben Johnson coached in Detroit. So if those 3 guys are on the board at 10 and you can't trade back, who are you taking?
So I'll walk you through my thought process here. I love Colston Loveland, but his injury, where he's not practicing the entire offseason, there is some talk that there is more to the injury than people realized, that he might need a couple more surgeries. There's talk of he possibly has a hip injury. If any of that is true, he's not my pick at 10. Now, if I think he's going to be ready to go before the season and my doctors have given me the okay, the thumbs up, then yeah, he's another top 10, 12 player in this draft. And he'd be a really, really nice addition. I think he's a great locker room guy. Like I love and hate that he played through injury this year. I love because it shows his toughness. It shows his loyalty to the team. It shows his love of the game. I hate the fact that, again, it might be a year or 2 before we ever get to see Colston Loveland. And I have a little bit of memory of a tight end from Michigan that gave into injury, played his final game with Michigan. His name was Jake Butt. Decided to play in their bowl game when some others made the decision not to because he wanted to show his loyalty to the team. Blew out his knee. Never was the same player.
Yeah.
So I think Colston Loveland would probably be out for me. Mason Graham, I've already talked about him. I love him. Love his game. Best all-around defensive tackle, safest player that you could probably take in this entire draft. But this is also a really deep defensive tackle class. So I feel like I've got 2 picks in the second round for the Bears. I could take 2 defense tackles and feel really good. Alfred Collins.
Tyleik Williams.
Yeah, Tyleik Williams. You can take both of those guys. You could really get big in the middle there and feel good about it. And so I'm probably leaning towards Kelvin Banks. Offensive tackle is one of those positions. If you don't take a first-round pick, you're probably not getting a quality guy. You're not going to have somebody that's going to be top half of the league at their position. And like I said, Braxton Jones, last year of his contract, you probably don't want to renew it. You're looking for a really nice upgrade there. You've got other places that you could play Calvin Banks this year if you need him to, while you start Braxton Jones, if that's the way you want to go. I would probably lean that way just because it's such a valuable position. You've got your franchise quarterback. You've got to protect his blind side. And I think Calvin Banks is a really, really good player, probably one of the most consistent tackles of the last few years.
Yes, and also another thing about Kelvin Banks, the Bears are probably going to give Joe Thuney maybe a 2-year extension, but in case Kelvin Banks fails at left tackle, you could kick him inside the guard and have him replace Joe Thuney when those 2 years are up. And so his versatility is another reason why he is likely to be a top 10, if not top 8 pick, as Rap Sheet suggested. And now the San Francisco 49ers are on the clock at 11. And Albert Breer, in his Monday column, said that it was told to him by other teams that they view Walter Nolan as the ideal Robert Saleh defensive tackle. And you can talk about the character concerns all you want, but the 49ers are one of those teams that has an infrastructure to deal with players like Walter Nolan. Chris Kucherov, they are arguably the best friggin' defensive line coach in the entire National Football League. So if in the event both Mason Graham and Walter Nolan are at 11, I wouldn't be shocked if they went Walter Nolan.
I would do that. That would be my pick if I had a choice. I've talked about it. I love Walter Nolan. I really do. I think he's going to be a star in the league. I think some of those character things, part of just growing up. I hope that he's learned from it. I'm sure he's been asked about it. I haven't heard any negative comments that he failed when teams asked him about those past issues. So I think he'd be a great pick for San Francisco. Like you said, when you look at the players that they've had in the past, when Robert Saleh was there before, they were willing to take some of these kind of guys, and he fits the body type that they like. He wants to get downhill. He wants to get after the quarterback, and no one does it better than Walter Nolan from the defensive tackle position.
Yes, and for the record, both Albright and Matt Miller had the 49ers taking Graham at 11, and Peter Schrager had them taking Nolan with Graham on the board. So that is something I could easily see happening in a situation like that. And the Dallas Cowboys are on the clock at 12. Like most of the tea leaves suggest that they're in on a wide receiver, whether that be Matthew Golden or Tetairoa McMillan. However, one of their insiders, Mike Fisher, I think it's his name, who covers the Cowboys, he reported something very interesting today. And hang on, let me see if I can find it on my phone here. Yes, he said he was told that in Cowboys pre-draft meetings that Brian Schottenheimer was pounding the table for players with high character. Like he seems to be deviating a little bit from the norm there in the Cowboys, because previous head coaches in Dallas would just leave it all to Jerry to bring these players that had character questions in and go from there. But Schottenheimer seems to be placing a real premium on character here. So yes, Daniel Jeremiah mocked Tetairoa McMillan to them. Matt Miller gave them Tet McMillan, and Benjamin Albright gave them Matthew Golden. But Peter Schrager threw a little curveball here. Keep in mind, the retirement of Zach Martin leaves a little hole on their arms line. He gave them Tyler Booker, and Tyler Booker is one of the highest character players in this draft class. So the Cowboys, they have a pretty interesting dynamic here.
Yeah, I probably, it's a little early for me on Tyler Booker. Like I said, high character guy. He's just a little bit lower on my board than I would be for 12. I'm a big Tet McMillan fan. I think he'd be a great addition with CeeDee Lamb already there. There's some parts of their games that overlap, but still, like, who are going to double in that situation? You can't leave Tet singled up.
Yep.
He's going to dominate that situation. Same with CeeDee Lamb. I know Matthew Golden, he posted that picture with Jerry Jones, and there's a lot of connections being made there. And he'd be a very different receiver than what you got with CeeDee Lamb. I'm not a big Matthew Golden fan. He was the number 3 receiver for most of his college career, number 2 when he was with Texas until an injury happened. And I get that he's fast, but I didn't think he ran that fast when he played football. he wasn't 4.29 speed when I watch him play for Texas. So I would probably lean towards Tet McMillan here. If I was the GM, I still think he's probably got pretty good high character. I really don't care a whole lot about what he said again when he was 19 years old. I think teammates are going to say some incredible things about him. This last year, Arizona had nobody else on offense. Everybody knew the ball's going McMillan's way, and they still couldn't stop him. And he still was able to get yards after catch, even being double, triple covered. He did the Top Gun, I'm going to put on the brakes and they're going to fly right by. And I don't know how many times he'd do like a deep in or a slant route. He'd catch it, brakes, boom, kick it back out to the outside and make it for a really, really big gain. I think the Cowboys would really love that. I don't think they can go wrong with any of those names, though. I think they're all going to be very solid players in the NFL. I just think McMillan has the highest upside.
Yeah, I personally am leaning towards McMillan being that pick at 12 based on the tea leaves that are out there. And the Miami Dolphins, they are a team that could go a lot of different ways because this is an aging roster coming out of cap purgatory. They're about to get rid of Jalen Ramsey. They could go in various ways. And Matt Miller reported that the Dolphins are targeting a tackle, a corner, or a safety at 13. And Schrager, Mason Graham, he gave them Mason Graham. He fell to 13. He would make sense at 13 if he fell there. Matt Miller gave them Armand Membo, although I don't see him falling to 13. Albright gave them Jody Bear. Now, here's a guy that I've heard being a perfect fit for that defense. And Adam Schefter said it's not just Kelvin Banks that's going to go higher than expected. He says Jody Barron's going to go higher than expected. So he would factor into the equation there. And Daniel Jeremiah had the Dolphins trading back from 13 with the Broncos, and the Broncos would up for Colson Loveland in a move Ben Albright does not see happening for what that's worth. So a lot of different directions for the Dolphins. But here's another name that I think should factor into the equation there for the Dolphins. Gray Zabel. Because their offensive line needs help. Gray Zabel brings 5 position versatility. Todd McShay himself said he would not be surprised if Gray Zabel went as high to the Dolphins at 13. Would you be surprised if Zabel ends up being their pick at 13?
No, I mean, he's one of the most versatile players in this entire draft when it comes to the offensive line. He can play guard, center, other guard. You could probably even try him at tackle. And I think he'd be able to hold up his own. I mean, that's what he played in college. So I think he'd be a really good pick for them. They can plug and play. Where do we need him the most? And they need a lot of help on that offensive line right now. Barron would be another one that, like I said, they need a lot of help in that secondary. Safety, corner, he's played it all. So getting those versatile players that you can move around to, match up football, I think that would be another really good pick for them. They need edge help. I mean, Miami really does need help everywhere. Yep. It's just one of those rosters. They went all in there for the last few years and it didn't work out. And I don't blame them. I mean, if you feel like you've got the roster, go for it. But this is the other side of it where now, like I said, you've got all these aging players. You've got these big bloated contracts. You've got to start figuring out, how do we rebuild this? Who are we actually going to rebuild around? So I could be really okay with any of those players. I mean, like I said, Membu is probably not going to be here. If he was here, I mean, I'd be running to the podium. I don't care who's calling me. If they're even offering a first-round pick, I'm going, nope. I can't get a tackle like this where I'm going to be any other time. So but realistically, I'd probably lean towards Barron. I think he's going to be a really good player. Second best cornerback behind Travis Hunter in this draft. That versatility, like I said, you can play him at safety, you can play him at corner, he can play the slot, he can play outside, whatever you need him to do, the guy's going to thrive.
Yeah, Jade Barron is a Swiss Army knife that many NFL defensive coordinators have fallen in love with during this draft process. And the Indianapolis Colts at 14, almost everybody expects them to take one of the 2 tight ends if one or both fall to them, whether that be Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland. But in Peter Schrager's mock, he had the Colts trading up to 10 with the Bears for Loveland. So like I said, if the Bears have that scenario with Mason Graham, Colston Loveland, and Kelvin Banks on the board at 10. And the Colts, all right, here's our third round pick this year. We'll give you our third round pick this year to go up to 10 to get our tight end. Would you accept that deal if you were the Bears?
Yeah, I at that point, most of the, like I said, blue chip guys are gone. There's not going to be much difference between what you can get at 10 compared to what you could get at 14. And if you're getting an extra third round pick, I just think the Bears, the nice thing is, like I said, you got that first round pick, 2 second round picks. Now you've added another third round pick. You can really build this roster.
Yes.
And your coach's image. You know, there's always that really big turnover whenever you hire a new coach. The more ammo that you have to fire at the board, the more it's just going to look really, really nice moving forward.
Without a doubt. And also, outside of Joe Shane and Brian Dable, I cannot think of a head coach GM pairing that's on shakier ground heading into the season than Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen are. So given that it's essentially playoffs or bust for them this season, I could easily see them trading up to get one of those 2 tight ends. Can you?
Yeah, it's such a huge need for them right now. And you're trying to do everything possible for your quarterback, Richardson. You're trying to show, hey, we did not make a mistake by taking this guy as a top 5 pick. And I still think he's going to be a bust. I think he's one of those guys, again, that you see, hey, it's great that he's an athlete, but there is so much more that goes into quarterback. Like, you can't just be an athlete and expect to thrive in the NFL. Lamar Jackson, he's actually a pretty darn good thrower of the football. He's a smart kid. He does so much more. Like, he uses his legs when he has to, not like this is the only thing I'm good at, so I'm going to keep doing it over and over again. And so, yeah, for the Colts, I get it. You're trying your one last ditch effort to maximize Anthony Richardson, give him a big target over the middle that can run, that can make people miss, that can even help out in the run game. I think Colston Loveland is a really, really good blocker when he's healthy. So I get the pick. I just think in the end, they're going to come back, and next year there's going to be a whole new coaching staff and GM there as well.
I would expect no less, unfortunately, for the Colts, a storied organization from the Peyton Manning years. They have fallen very, very far since then, unfortunately. I just feel bad for their fans, that's all. And the Atlanta Falcons at 15, like after 4 drafts of going offense, it's definitely going to be defense here. And let's see, Matt Miller had them taking James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. And he said that the same source that told him that Michael Penix was a real possibility at 8 in the days leading up to last year's draft said that he should mock James Pierce to them for what that's worth. Benjamin Albright gave them Mike Green out of Marshall, and that makes sense because Raheem Morris was at his pro day, and when a coach is at somebody's pro day, that really puts my antenna up personally. And Peter Schrager, though, gave them Jahad Campbell. And keep in mind, though, the Falcons also have a need at off-ball linebacker. And yes, Jahad Campbell, there's buzz that he might start the year on PUP due to that shoulder injury. But if the Falcons believe that that's not going to be a problem long-term, and they believe that he could be a Micah Parsons type weapon for that defense, meaning you could have him at stack backer and line him up at edge as well. I think that would be a sneaky good pick for them there.
He's a very high character guy. He's a great player on the field. I think wherever he goes, he's going to be a really good player, probably a 2-3 contract kind of guy. So I wouldn't blame them if they went that direction. I still would go pass rusher just because you have nobody. They were the worst team in football when it came to getting after the quarterback. And you cannot make a name.
That defense, like I'm sure you saw their game. I don't mean to take anything away from Bo Nix. You deserve credit for beating the teams that are on your schedule and playing as well as you did against whatever team hands you're dealt. But that defense was one of the softest defenses I've ever seen play on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Last year.
Yeah,
and they need a tone setter for that pass rush. And Benjamin Albright said that they want Micah Williams so bad, but he doesn't think Micah Williams falls past 14. So with Micah Williams, Yeah, so if Michael Williams goes at 9 to the Saints or in that range before the Falcons, they have to choose between guys with these character red flags, like Mike Green and James Pierce Jr., or injury red flag in Jihad Campbell. So I think it would probably be one of those three guys. And we only have about 23 minutes or so left, so we're going to pick up the pace here. The Cincinnati Bengals, this is a team that it almost certainly has to be defense. Like the Bengals, like as great as they were on offense last year, their defense was the exact opposite. And if they are to get anything and get any ring on their fingers in the prime of Joe Burrow, they're going to have to rebuild that defense the right way. And they have just drafted bust after bust after bust in recent years. And let's see who they have here. Peter Schrager gave them Mike Green. I think he'd make sense if he falls. Matt Miller gave them Shamar Stewart. Yes, he does have the traits, but kind of like Ted McMillan, I've been hearing that there's some teams that believe that he doesn't love football. And Benjamin Albright gave them Walter Nolan. Oh, if Walter Nolan is available at 17, I think he has to be the pick for the Bengals there.
Yeah, you take that risk. He's just such a incredible talent, and you put him there with Trey Hendrickson, I think that would be a really good pairing. Now you still got to get that contract done with Hendrickson at some point, but no, that'd finally give them some firepower up front. Mike Green, I think, would be another one just because he's a little bit different type of edge rusher than Hendrickson. Would be a really fun player to see those two go at it. Shamar Stewart, like you said, I go back and forth on him because he's one of the most athletically gifted players in this entire draft. But does he love the game? How good is his vision? There's a lot of big questions that come up with him. I might be willing to take the risk at this point just because I'm going to do something. You're wasting one of the greatest quarterbacks of the last 15 years.
Yeah.
By not getting a better defense to surround him with. So I think I might be willing to take a chance, maybe go Shamar Stewart here.
But if Nolan is there, I usually take Nolan ahead of any of those other guys that I mentioned, because and plus the Bengals historically have been known for being willing to take in guys with character red flags no matter the circumstance. So Nolan would make a ton of sense there. Dare I say, but if he does fall out of the top 15, I think 17 might be his floor, dare I say, to the Bengals. So add the Seahawks. Matt Miller reported the pick. Multiple people told him that it's come down to two guys, Tetero and McMillan, if he falls, or Gray Zabel. But if both are off the board, I think the Seahawks are going to do what Daniel Jeremiah had them doing in his mock, trading back with the Giants who come up to AT to jump the Steelers to get their quarterback, which the buzz suggests it's Jackson Dart right now. So if Zabel and Tetero and Millen are off the board, which is very possible, I could easily see the Seahawks immediately getting on the phone with one of those quarterback needy teams.
I mean, John Schneider, it wouldn't be the first time he's done this.
Oh, he's Mr. Tradeback.
Yeah, Mr. Tradeback. I mean, it's like multiple picks, and I talk to Seahawks fans. They're like, it sucks to watch day one of the draft because it's most of the time we can't expect that we're actually going to have a draft pick by the end of it. And so, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they did that. I think if Gray Zabel's there, very, very good pick for them. Again, they need multiple offensive linemen. It wouldn't surprise me if their first 3 picks are offensive linemen in this draft. And he'd be a good one because, again, you've got the versatility. You can move him around. Let's say later on you find a really good left guard prospect you like in the second round. Okay, let's plug him in at center or right guard. You find somebody in the next round that you really like for one of those other spots and just say, okay, Zabel, now this is your spot. And so I think that would be their best option. I think McMillan would be great, but they don't have the offensive line to take advantage of his skill set. So I think that'd be more of a luxury pick right now when they have such a huge need. And you just added Sam Darnold, who had great protection in Minnesota. You need to get him that there in Seattle.
Absolutely. And I think if they had to choose between Zabel and Ted McMillan, I would much rather do Gray Zabel at 18 and use one of those 2 second-round picks he got on a wide receiver. Maybe even trade up to land a Jaden Higgins or something like that, who would add a bolt of lightning to that wide receiver room. So Gray Zabel, Jaden Higgins, that would be a dream haul for the Seattle Seahawks. And let's talk about the Broncos for a moment, since you covered them. Like, for much of the past 2 weeks, leading up to last weekend, I was thinking, Omarion Hampton. If he's there at 20, he's the pick. But based on the intel flying around right now, not so fast. Matt Miller gave them Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. He's one of the best, if not the best character guy in this draft. And Schrager also gave them Emeka Egbuka. And Matt Miller said that he believes the Broncos are more interested in wide receivers and tight ends in round 1. And Benjamin Albright, who's the closest to the Broncos out of all those 4 insiders, he had them going Ohio State running back Travion Henderson at 20 in his mock draft. And there's also talk, the Broncos, they're a team that's looked into moving up. Sean Payton always trades up, but no, it could be different this year. They could be looking to trade down. But Travion, like a lot of people might freak out about Travion Henderson being the pick at 20 if they choose one of those 2 running backs. And I think if assuming they stay at 20, I think that's what they're going to do. They're going to choose one of those 2 running backs. But Travion Henderson should not surprise anybody. Like Luca Evans, who's one of the new guys on the Broncos beat. He's at the Denver Post. He spoke to an NFL running backs coach, not with the Broncos. And the coach said that Travion Henderson and Omarion Hampton, I don't rank one above the other because they're 2 different flavors. It's like ice cream. And the reason why nobody should be surprised if Henderson ends up being the pick, it's because he can fit more of that, the Joker role far more than Omarion Hampton could.
Yeah, it's easier to find somebody that can run between the tackles, do the short yardage stuff, than it is to find the explosive guy that can turn any touch into a touchdown. Plus, then, best probably pass blocking running back in this entire draft, which is huge for Sean Payton. That would not surprise me if they went that direction. I've been saying from day one, wide receiver is a bigger need than what Sean Payton's trying to make it sound. Like, he keeps talking, oh, yeah, we love our young guys. We think they're going to take that next step. Maybe we'll bring in a veteran, those kind of things. To me, when he's talking like that, I'm going, like, a light's flashing, like, okay, he's trying to misdirect everybody, go in a different direction. And, Omarion Hampton, when everybody's like, oh, yeah, it's got to be him. And then you see all these major guys come in and be like, nah, it's not him. I think this is, Peter Schrager. He's one that is very close to Sean Payton. They're friends. Yeah. They talk on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And when he says Egbuka, I'm going, yeah, I completely see it. He's a great run blocker. He is do it all, run wide receiver, run over the middle, beat you over the top, screen game, whatever you need him to do. It could be a captain on this team moving forward.
Yes. And Sean Payton is one of those guys that puts a premium on character when drafting a player. He did it. He did take character risks, but in the early stages of the team building in New Orleans, he put a premium on character, and they're still in the early stages of that process. And Egbuka would make sense for that reason as well, because he's Peter Schrager, get this, he called Emeka Egbuka, bar none, the most universally well-liked prospect in this draft. Like, whether it's him or Travion Henderson, either one of them brings captain level leadership, because like the Ohio State program revered both of those guys for their leadership. And I would not be surprised if either one of those guys ends up being the pick at 20. And yes, you might extend Cortland Sutton, but keep in mind, he's 30 years old. It's only going to be a brief extension. And Sean Payton didn't necessarily have big bodies all the time as his wide receiver one. He likes those Egbuka guys too, doesn't he?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's willing to go for those kind of guys. And like I said, high character, going to be great in the locker room. A guy that can build his career with Bo Nix.
Yeah.
Is going to do all the short yardage stuff that you want, the third down catches. Like when Ohio State needed a catch on a 3rd and 5 or shorter, they didn't throw it to Jeremiah Smith. They threw it to Egbuka. That's who they trusted in those big moments. And so for me, when I see that, Sean Payton's going to go, yep, that's the kind of guy we need. I look at that Bills game, Broncos, third down situations. They had like 3 or 4 drops from wide receivers that were open. And Bo Nix put it right on the dot and the guys dropped it. I'm sure that they're looking at that going, we can't have that. We need a guy that we can trust. And Egbuka is that kind of guy.
Yeah, nothing the Broncos do should surprise any of us tomorrow. They have literally sent out every conflicting piece of information possible. But back to Travion Henderson for a moment. Like a lot of people might poo-poo on the pick. Yeah, I understand positional value and all that. However, you have got to keep in mind the context of the draft. Benjamin Albright added this to his report. And it was reported by Jeremy Fowler of ESPN this morning that on Tuesday of this week, the Chiefs had a Zoom interview with Travion Henderson, and Andy Reid was on the call. That should pick your antenna up to the nth degree, shouldn't it? Because like Travion Henderson, I think Andy Reid might be looking at him and saying, he's my next Brian Westbrook. So and the Commanders could be looking his way too, because like in that Cliff Kingsbury offense, all right, Jay Daniels, throw it underneath to Travion Henderson and he'll be a yak god for you in the middle of the field. So those two teams are eyeballing him big time, and that's why the Broncos might have no choice to stay at 20. And because of that intel and because of what he brings, I'm not going to poo-poo on it and give it a bad grade if it happens.
Yeah, I think, if the Broncos were to make that trade back with, let's say, the Giants or the Browns, I don't think Henderson's making it there. Egbuka maybe could.
Yeah.
But Henderson, I really don't think so, just because, again, like you said, he's just such a dynamic player. And teams are figuring out, because teams are playing these cover 4, cover 6 shells so much to stop the passing game, the explosive part of your offense, more than anything else now, starting to become your run game. You look at Philly. What did they do? Saquon Barkley became one of the most explosive players in the entire league. Derrick Henry, what he's been able to do, just where teams are spread out and all of a sudden you have this 240-pound running back coming at you. Good luck. I don't know how you're stopping that, and teams are like with the Broncos. If you have Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin being able to run those deep routes, teams got to respect it. Then you got Travion Henderson coming out of the backfield. Hey, he's one-on-one with the linebacker. That linebacker doesn't stand a chance in that moment. So he's just such a dynamic player for any offense he goes to, not just the Broncos. That would be a lot of fun to see where he goes.
And as Lance Zierlein said in his scouting report on Travion Henderson, he is not Jahmyr Gibbs per se, but he can fill that exact same role for an NFL offense. And obviously NFL teams were obviously blushing at what Ben Johnson was able to do with Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit, and they could see him as the closest guy to a Gibbs type of player in this draft, in this running back group in general. And but another concern about Travion Henderson is his durability issues. Although Benjamin Albright did report that most teams were satisfied with his medicals at the combine, but he's a guy who you do not necessarily want to be a bell cow. So the Broncos, if they add another bruiser on day 3 to join Audric Estime, and you have a backfield of Audric Estime, Bruiser B, and Travion Henderson headed into the backfield, I think that would make the Travion Henderson pick even more easier to stomach there.
Yeah, I mean, I would love, this would be my dream. Travion Henderson, and then Martinez of Miami, Damian Martinez.
Whoa!
But those two together, and like I said, Estime can do a little bit of work to fill in whatever he needs. Man, that would be one of the more dynamic running back rooms. Not as good as Detroit. Nobody's as good as Detroit from the 1-2 punch.
Yep.
But still, I think the Broncos would be really happy about what they could do in the run game. Now you're going to have to use your 4th round pick. It's not going to be a late day 3 pick to get him. But yeah, that'd be a really fun group. And Sean Payton, you talked about earlier, running backs are not valued by most teams. Sean Payton really values running backs.
Yeah.
He uses them more than anybody else.
Yes. Although people should not be shocked or surprised whatsoever if Omarion Hampton is indeed their pick at 20, because many have compared him to Deuce McAllister, and Sean Payton loves those big bruising backs just as much as he loves those satellite backs in space. And and he might see Deuce McAllister 2.0 in Oman Hampton, but he might see Kamara in Travion Henderson. And the Broncos could very well have identical grades on these two, for all we know. So they're a mystery team tomorrow. And unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap it up in the next episode. We're not going to get to all these teams, but I want to talk about two more teams. The Arizona Cardinals, they're a very interesting team at 16. Jonathan Gannon, keep in mind, he was previously Eagles defensive coordinator before he became head coach of the Cardinals. He knows firsthand the value of having a super deep defensive line rotation like he had in Philly. And the Cardinals really prioritized beefing up the defensive line. They signed Josh Sweat free agency, Dalvin Tomlinson free agency, and they brought Calais Campbell back for what is likely the swan song of his NFL career, back where his NFL career started, and very fitting. But they could use help in the secondary. Schrager gave them Jody Barron in his mock. Matt Miller gave the Cardinals Matthew Golden in his mock. And he said that the most recent buzz suggested the Cardinals' top priority is adding offensive weapons. And that makes sense because outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride, teams just have to bracket those two. And then Kyler, and then that makes Kyler's life miserable. They could go a lot of different directions here. Ben Albright gave them Josh Simmons, the tackle from Ohio State, and their beat writer, Josh Weinfuss from ESPN, gave them Tyler Booker at 16. And Booker, a lot of people might say it's story for it, but the Cardinals are one of the best possible fits for a guy like Tyler Booker because of the power run scheme they do. This is a team that could go a lot of different ways, and they're all kind of like the Broncos. They're a team that I just literally have no idea what they're going to do right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to actually remember who I gave them in my mock draft that I did for the first round. I think I lean towards tackle, just because again I want to build up an offensive line. I think Josh Simmons was probably the guy that I picked for them as well. Daniel Jeremiah gave them Egbuka to pair up with Marvin Harrison Jr.
Buckeye time.
yeah, that'd be a lot of fun to see those two together. But I wouldn't surprise any direction that they really went. They could use an upgrade at a lot of different spots. They got some talent. I think they're a team that's right on that edge, depending on how Kyler Murray can really, hold himself together. But no, I think right now, like I said, I'd probably lean Josh Simmons just because I really want to build the offensive line. But I could see wide receiver and be happy about that too.
And yes, Cardinals cannot go wrong adding another weapon to the offense, beefing up the offensive line, or adding another body to that defensive line. Or even in that secondary. The secondary still needs work as well. So multiple directions the Cardinals can go. And in terms of trades, if there is one team that could make a big trade up the board, as Diana Rossini wrote in a report this morning in The Athletic, the Texans. Keep in mind, the Texans have 4 top 100 picks this year and 4 top 100 picks next year because of the Laramie Tunsil trade. And Matt Miller reported that they are, quote unquote, desperate to upgrade that offensive line. And why wouldn't they be? And the main reason why they traded away Laramie Tunsil is because D'Amico Ryans didn't see him as a fit in the locker room culture. And that's a very, very big deal. And so in my final draft mock that I just posted on all my social media accounts, I had the Bears trading back from 10 and the Texans giving them their second this year and one of their 2 seconds next year to move up and take Kelvin Banks. If the Texans make a big move like that tomorrow, that is a move I'm kind of expecting. What do you think?
I think it makes a ton of sense. I think that'd be a great move for them. Like I said, it's just such a huge need. And you saw last year, like your franchise quarterback, he went from rookie of the year, looking like a top 10 quarterback, to this last year looking like maybe falling out of the top 20 quarterbacks. And that was in big part not because his talent dropped, but because the offensive line just couldn't get it together. And then his wide receiver core got injured as well. I mean, there's a lot of things that went wrong for them, but getting a guy like Kelvin Banks where you can feel really good about him at that left tackle spot, that he's going to be a starter for you. I think in my final mock, I'm trying to remember here off the top of my head, I think I gave them Josh Connerly of Oregon.
Yes.
It's a little bit of a reach, but he was the only he's my next top tackle left. Like at that point, I already had most of the other top tackles completely gone. It's just one of those things where if you don't get your tackle in the first, you're not getting them. There's going to be other guys that are okay, but I don't think you're ever going to get a star unless you take him in the first.
He is Carl Dumler, ladies and gentlemen, NFL draft analyst and Denver Broncos analyst for MileHighHuddle.com. Follow him on X at Carl Dumler MHH and catch his podcast, Building the Broncos, every Tuesday with another good friend of the show, Nick Kendall, every Tuesday on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Carl, thank you so much for doing this special Draft Massive live stream with us. But before you go, I have one more question for you. Like I alluded to earlier, the drama tomorrow night is not likely to come not via Trade-A-Palooza, but from teams selecting players far earlier than consensus industry draft boards have them. So I want you to make a prediction, one player that nobody is mocking in the first round that you think goes in the first round tomorrow.
Oh man, that's a great question. Let me think off the top of my head. Just give me 1 second here. I'm going to go Omar Norman Lott.
Whoa!
Tennessee. I love his game. I hope he falls to the Broncos in round 2. Here's the guy, 6'3", 315 pounds, but he moves well. I mean, you can put him 3-tech, 5-tech, passing situations. You can even put him clear down to 0-tech, and he's going to get into the backfield. He's going to go make plays for you. That level of explosion, that first step quickness, and then he's got some counter moves that he can mix in there. There's just so much that I really like about his game, and he's got that fire in him. Like he's one of those guys that plays with his hair on fire, and I think teams are going to really fall in love with him. And that back end of teams maybe looking for that defensive line help after they watched what Philly did to the Chiefs. Hey, that's how you beat those top teams. You win with that inside pressure and make those quarterbacks feel really, really uncomfortable. I think he's going to get a bump because of that.
Omar Norman Lott was the standout on the defensive side of the ball for me at the Senior Bowl, and I got a chance to meet with him and interview him. I think I'm gonna put that interview up with him after the draft. Such a nice guy. I just hope he wherever he goes, he ends up out playing his draft slot. And a guy I'm going to go with is Daniel Jeremiah. Did not put him in his mock, but nobody should be surprised if LSU tight end Mason Taylor makes it in to the late end of the first round. Yes, he might not be on the level of Colston Lovener or Tyler Warren yet, but he's only 21 years old. He's a guy what amazed Sean Payton about Bo Nix is that he only had football-related material in his backpack. Mason Taylor's that same type of guy, and he's got elite football bloodlines. He's the son of Pro Football Hall of Famer Jason Taylor and the nephew of Pro Football Hall of Fame linebacker Zach Thomas. And Greg Cosell, who is one of the best all-22 film junkies in human history, he said that the way LSU used him, it didn't fully showcase what he eventually could be. He thinks Mason Taylor could end up being a top 5, if not top 3 tight end in the NFL one day. So let's say the Chiefs cannot trade up for a tackle and the tackle cupboard is bare at 31. I wouldn't be surprised if they took Mason Taylor there as Travis Kelce's long-term successor.
I would hate it. That's how you know it's a good pick. When opposing fans are sitting there saying, that sucks that he got picked by that team. So, no, that'd be a really good one. Keeps that tight end room strong. Position that Patrick Mahomes absolutely loves, wants to take advantage of when things are breaking down, have that guy over the middle that he can have a really good connection with. And like I said, Mason Taylor has so many things working for him. Bloodlines, great player, hard worker, loves football. I think that'd be a home run hit pick for them.
And so concludes this special Draft Massive live stream. But we'll be back tomorrow beginning at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, 7:30 Eastern, 5:30 Mountain, 4:30 Pacific. my right hand man, Hal Betts, and I will come to you at precisely 6:30 p.m. Central Time on the dot, and we will analyze all 32 picks as they are made in real time. If you want some outside the box thinking on what should be one of the more wild first rounds in modern memory, come join us tomorrow. The YouTube link is posted in my X account, on my Facebook page, and on my Instagram page at Sports Crunch with D-Crom. And remember, that is Crunch with a K. For Carl Dumler, this is David Cromwell saying so long, and wherever you do, please choose love, please choose kindness, please choose compassion, please choose selflessness, and please choose empathy, which are the core characteristics of the best teammates and teams in football or in any sport. Until tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, cats, kittens, stay cool, everybody. Take care.